Today, we're going to use the structure of the 10 tipping points, and we'll get to go through them together within our own systems. And as always, it's only about you. It's only about your system. You can just throw out everything I'm saying. It's just like what we're interested in is your system, what happens. And so what these tipping points are, in IFS, whenever you have a session at the end, you say, and you kind of invite the parts to update, like what's the learning? What did I learn from this? What opened up through this exploration, which Brenda was talking about, an excitement for something new? Like what's new? What are we going to see today? And those are what I call the tipping points. And it's like, can you remember as a kid learning a sport? I used to love what they call football in Europe, soccer in the US. And it's like when you started a sport, do you remember? It's like, okay, I just got to kick the ball. And wow, that's how I kick the ball. And I got to like go forward towards the goal. But then when you're out there, after hours of playing, something starts happening where you start being aware of where your teammates are. It's like, well, how do I know where my teammates are on the field? Something just starts to know that. You start to know where the other team is. And somehow you know where the ball is all the time on the field. And then you start to know where the clock is, how much time's left in the game. But wait a minute, I'm not even looking at the clock, but something knows it. It becomes aware of it. You become aware of the whole field. This is what opens. And this is what we find in this journey that we're on of kind of healing our system and moving more and more into abiding as qualities of self. And that's what we're going to be doing together today. Let's start with the first tipping point, which is what we've started with, which is just, how are you? Like, how are you, Johannes? How are you, Xandra? How are you, Jessica, Debbie, Tom, Anne, Kelly, Antonio, David, Valerie, Brenda, Sid? How are you? And this is where we get to really listen. It's like, what thoughts, what arises? Is there a sense of, maybe I'm excited. Where are we going? Maybe it's one that wants to have some ahas. Or maybe there's a healing part. Is something going to happen? Am I going to find more peace here today? I'm going to find more of this peace that David speaks of. Or maybe there's a critic. How are you? Like, what's here? And what I'm going to invite, like, what's the loudest for each of us right now when I ask you, how are you? What's the loudest part you hear? And that's just a word for like the weather, the thoughts, feelings, and sensations, in contrast to the sky, to the beingness and selfness that's intrinsically here. What's the loudest part? There's always a little sense of want there. Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's a critic saying, gosh, it's going really slow today. Are there so many people? Is this going to be meaningful? Debbie and I love connection. Am I going to be able to feel connection with everybody with 12 people here? What am I going to say? What's the loudest part for each of us? And as you hear that, if you hear that voice or feel it, where do you notice it? Is it a voice like, where do you notice it? It's of a location from where you hear it. What's the next loudest voice you hear? Am I doing this right? A do it right part, a critic part, a sense of a to-do list part. Oh, I've got things I need to do. Oh, wait a minute. What am I doing? Spending an hour and a half in this group today. I have things I need to do. Can each of us find a second voice, a second part? And as we find it, can we be aware of both of them? Both of these voices, these feelings. Ultimately, to see if we each can find three arisings. Like in my system, there's a sense of this enthusiasm, this sense of this one that just enjoys playing with friends and connecting, as I get to meet Brenda for the first time. And oh my God, I haven't seen Xander in person for a while. And Tom's back, and and you'll get to enjoy Kelly. If you haven't met her before, and Jessica and David that always pushes the edge for me, and Hannah, I'm not sure if we've met before, and it's Valerie and Debbie, who's just love, and Antonio, who I don't really know. There's that part. And there's also kind of a do it right part. It's like, wow, is this going to work with 12? We're going to be able to fully hear everybody today. I've got a do it right part. And I've also, let's see if there's one more loudest part in me. Oh, would be, am I going to remember the order? Am I going to kind of do it right? Am I going to remember the order of all of these tipping points? And so what's there for each of you? See if we can find three parts. And then the last thing with how are you, which we heard in David, is like these are the parts, but what do they arise in? What is your beingness? What is the space that they're arising in? And that would be a quality of self, a quality of beingness. And what's the most prominent quality of beingness that's here for you right now? It could be like that peace. It could be an openness. It could be that the allowing that David described. It could be flow. It could be ease. It could be love. It could be nurture, connectedness, care. What is it for you right now? So this is the first tipping point. Just how are you? And notice it's just infinitely deep as far as where we can go with that. So I'd love to hear from two people in this first one. And maybe just do one of the icons to raise your hand or click your hand up, and love to hear from two people. Like, how are you? And am I seeing Kelly move? There's Kelly. Yay. How is Kelly? What's here?
Yeah, good, thanks, Sid. For me, the strongest one was the enthusiastic one. It was like, oh, I love this. This has helped me loads. I can't wait what to learn next. This is amazing. Then a doer. Oh, when's this going to be finished? We can watch telly. We can watch a film with my son. And then the other one was, oh, my tooth's hurting. I hope it don't keep me up at night. Um, and yeah, and that was it.
Oh, yay. So as we hear these three parts in Kelly, as we hear this in Kelly, like we can hear her speaking of her system, but can we also find that she points to these parts, these voices inside of her? Can we find a resonance in us? This one that's excited in her? Can we find some enthusiasm? Like, where are we going to go? Oh, is he going to make a fool of himself today? Am I going to learn something? What's this going to be? Maybe some enthusiasm. We can find that voice inside of us. And then she speaks of, and when you hear it, where do you hear it from? If you could get a sense of where you hear that or feel that, a sense of a location.
The enthusiastic one was felt like the chest area.
Chest, yeah, like where for all of us, where do we feel this? And then Kelly has a to-do list, like, whoa, how long is this going to be? I have things I need to do. And we all relate to that to-do part that's just manages and takes care of things for us. Like, oh, checks it off. And where does that show up in each of our systems? Is it off to the left? To the left? Is it in our head? Where's that? And then lastly, Kelly point, I think I was hearing something that gets a little overwhelmed, like, oh, am I going to be able to sleep? Is this going to be too much? And something that gets a little overwhelmed. And often those can be young parts in our system, real vulnerabilities that get overwhelmed. Can we relate to that? Something that gets overwhelmed. Anything else, Kelly?
Just say a real sense of peace and aliveness.
There we go. So we have these parts, and then what they're arising in, this background, this being, peace and aliveness. For all of us, what's most like peace that's here now? What's most like peace? And how do you know that's here? How do you know peace is here? What's the somatic experience of this? And aliveness. What does that mean to your system? What's most like aliveness? Thank you so much, Kelly. What a great start. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Um, yeah, what am I sharing? Um, that's interesting. There's a very forgetful part in play at the moment, and it's trying to remember. This was my third part, and it was desperately trying to remember what my first two parts were. By the time that I got to my third part, it's like I'd already forgotten them, you know? So yeah, it was really, and then since I put my hand up, it's been like, okay, I got to remember what that part is, and I've got to remember what that part is. I've got to remember no, and then it's like going back and being like, okay, but what's the first part, and then what's the second part? So yeah, very forgetful part. Um, the first part that came up was like I don't know how to describe it, but essentially it was like, right, I really need to pay attention here. Like, because I've been trying to do this out in the wild, as it were, and struggling a bit with it, you know? So I'm like, okay, I've got to listen to Sid. I've got to work this out. And then the second part that came up was a frustrated part because recently I've been really struggling to locate where the parts are arising. It feels like they all arise in the center of my head at the moment, rather than having a location anywhere. So it's like find three parts, but they all seem to be here. And so it's kind of like a frustration. It's like, oh, but aren't they supposed to be down here or to the left? Aren't I supposed to be able to like have them in different places? You know, sometimes they come up in really obvious places, but recently they all just seem to be here, you know? So I'm like, yeah, so that's another part that's coming up. It's like, yeah, I'm not doing it right kind of thing. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Tom. And for all of us, if we hear Tom speak of these three loudest arisings in his system with how are you? He's speaking about his system, but can you find where he's also speaking, pointing to yours as well, to something that is universal? This sense of paying attention, paying attention. Like you need to get this. There's something I'm wanting to learn. Like, and what is that in us? Something that wants to learn, that wants to improve, that wants to get clarity in our lives. Can we find what's that? Like for me, it's like this understanding part. Notice that. Can you notice the tone of it? Almost the tone of it, the feel of it, the vibration, this that wants to learn. In me, it's like kind of a high energy and kind of grasping to get it. And then there was this frustration, frustrated part. Maybe I'm not doing this right. There's something else I should be doing. And as he described the sense of this is part of the game, is this locating where these arisings are for us, a sense of locating them. And like, why do we do that? Who cares? Where this seems really helpful is if we can be aware of what's arising in us, the frustration, the sense of pay attention, the forget, if we can be aware of it as an object, if we're aware of it, we're not aware from it, we're not blended with it, we're not identifying with it. In this game, the only way suffering happens with this model is we blend or identify with something that comes and goes. But if we can be aware of it, then what we're aware from is this beingness that we're playing with, these qualities of beingness. And so for Tom, the sense of they're all in his head, and my question for you with this, Tom, is they're in the head. Are you able to be aware of that? Are you able to be, or does it seem like you're aware from them? Can you be aware of them as an object? Oh, wow, they're all in my head. They're all in this little space, but I'm aware of them.
Yeah, aware of, not from. Just, but then it's funny because then it's like, oh, but they should like this voice that comes up and goes, but they no, they should be somewhere else. But I am aware of rather than from. Yeah, yeah,
Beautiful. And do we all know that, right? This voice, like, what does it sound like in you? It should be different. Something should be different. What's the tone of that in you? Is it like a masculine authority? Is it gentle? What's the tone of it should be different? And where do we each hear that voice? And lastly, Tom's third part he described was this sense of forgetfulness. No, I need to keep track of all of this. I need to keep track of what's going on. Sid says, what are the three parts? I need to keep track of it. We find that part. Maybe that's kind of the understanding part, or it's kind of an analyzer or a mapper in my system, mapping part. I need to keep track of. I need to remember. We all find that. And as you find these in your system, can you again get a sense of where do you hear them? Where is a sense of where they're located? Beautiful. Thank you, Tom. So that's our first tipping point, which is just how are you? What's here as we notice these precious, subtle expressions of life in you. Our next one is you and your parts are never alone. What do you do with that? You and your parts are never alone. You are never alone. These aspects of you are never alone. How do you make sense of that? And if you're not alone, what's here? What's here? And this is where we become curious about what are your default qualities of beingness in your system. Forget anything you've read or heard, like just tuning into you. What is the background? What's this default? If you're never alone, is it there's presence here? What is your word for each of us? What's your most prominent word? Is there's awareness here? There's love here. There's care here. There's silence, stillness, equanimity, peace, calm. What would your word be? Or for some of us, I can't just find one. I've got 2 or 3 that are my default. Well, what's your default? If you and your parts are never alone, what would your default be? So that as we're all just feeling into this and feeling into this beingness, this self that's here, just notice, where do you find it? And how do you know it's here? How can you tell it's here? Does your breath change as you become aware of it? Does something relax? And as we're all feeling into that, I'm supposed to do a quick housekeeping every time. I'm just going to do that as you're all inside. And this is just, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm a mediator. And for me, this isn't the EIFS of psychotherapy. It's friends and colleagues exploring together. And if everyone's good being responsible for their own journeys today, could I get a thumbs up from everybody if you're good with that, please? Thank you so much. As you notice that still, what's here? You and your parts are never alone. What's the beingness that's here? And I have one more housekeeping. That if you notice, I have the recording on. I always record these so I can make them available for others who are all for free that are unable to come. And this is unlike a lot of workshops that we don't go in so much into the stories of our parts, the story of what's rising. Instead, as you'll see later on today, the focus is on what's being longed for fulfillment, and to help us find that that's here in your intrinsic nature. So we don't go, so there's no need to share anything that you'd be uncomfortable with, but only my square, the video of my square is ever shared, never your image. However, the audio that you share today, what you speak, could be shared. And so to ask just to listen to your protectors, listen, and just no need to share anything you'd be uncomfortable with. And at the end, you find like, gosh, I wish I hadn't said that. Just stay on and let me know, and I'll delete it. If everybody's good with that this might be shared electronically, if I could get a thumbs up from you, please. Thank you so much. So then my question for all of us is, if you and your parts aren't alone, what's here with you? What is that quality of beingness that's here, or qualities? And again, maybe we could hear from 2 different people that could share what their default is. Who would like to share? I could get a little thumbs thing. And Debbie, who we can't see, invisible Debbie today.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear. Okay, yeah. Darn, I don't know. So yeah, I have a part that is trying to figure out my video thing situation. But yeah, when you ask that question about our parts never being alone, oh boy, that's for me, that's like kind of my core wounding. So yeah, so I do have parts that, like, very, very young parts that do feel, like, alone. Um, so that yeah, so for me, again, I think I've talked to you about talked about this. It's like going to those really young parts that do feel terrified and alone, and then able to make connection with it, and then have a sense of like, oh, they've relaxed.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Because it's not automatic that I can go, oh,
But that's
parts
a
are
good
because
question.
you're never
Does,
alone.
does that make sense? So for all of us, we might have some aspects of us like, oh, I know that self is here because I'm never alone. But then we have other aspects of us, just like Debbie's pointing to, maybe young aspects of us, vulnerable aspects, even the contraction, maybe ones that just something got frozen when we were 6 or 10 years old. That's like, oh, I feel very alone. I am very alone. And that for those, sometimes, like Debbie's describing, it takes a little bit more for them to get a sense that they're not alone. And then for most of us, we have parts that no matter what, we have like, I'm alone, darn it, I don't believe this, I don't care, I'm alone. It's just for all of us, see how that plays. And back to you, Debbie, for your parts to sense that they're not alone. What do they feel? What is the quality of beingness in you that helps them get that sense?
Mhm. It's more like a felt sense. It's like like they sense, well, I don't know if it's myself or higher self or whatever, they sense a presence. It's like a feeling rather than it's like warmth, I guess.
Beautiful. Just for all of us. Debbie's a really good check and balance in this group because she keeps it somatic. She brings it back to the body. It's like, yeah, it's not words, it's a felt presence that the parts feel. Can you relate to that? Can we all relate to that? That this beingness, that it could be like this felt presence. And what's the flavor of it in each of our systems? For Debbie, she describes it as a warmth. How does your system, what are your parts, these aspects of you experience that they're not alone? Is it warmth? What's your word? Anything else you'd like to share, Debbie?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And is there anyone else who would like to share how beingness is for you? What's your default flavor before we dive further into beingness? This is where we're going next. Well, then let's dive. Let's continue diving. But then let me check first before we do. How's everybody doing? This is gonna be, we're playing with a lot today. Is everybody doing all right? Is there anything bubbling? It's like, but Sid, I got a question. I'm concerned. This isn't really working for me. I've got something that's blocking everything. Is everybody doing all right? We'll see if we can make it through all 10 tipping points today, but we might not. Well, I'll try to do that. Valerie's got something. Hey, Valerie.
Um, I haven't come to these in a long time, Sid, because they were overwhelming for me in the beginning, and I'm back sort of sensing how it is, and I'm more attuned to the overwhelm. I'm like, wow, I'm already saturated. Like, so many parts arise. I think my default is overwhelm. That's where I am. So
So how about that?
I'm gonna
Let's
tune into that. Do I?
Yes. Yeah. It's like, is there a problem? Like, just notice for all of us as we hear Debbie's system's got there's a part that's overwhelmed. Like, whoa, you're talking there are all these parts, and you want me to be aware of these? Come on. And then there's the overwhelm. Can we just, can we all appreciate that? Do we all know that in our own systems? This overwhelm that comes. And where's the problem? Is overwhelm a problem? Or is it a problem because another part comes up? It's like, whoa, I don't like this, but this is too much. And just to notice how that plays. I don't want you to feel alone in this, Valerie. That's why I wanted to include everybody in it, because we all know this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. It is a different flavor. It's more of a like, oh, that's capacity. And now the safe and supportive thing to do for my system is to stop here versus a like, oh shit, I'm fucked, you know? Um, so yeah, I'm gonna bow out and try. I may see you again in 6 months.
Can I, before you leave,
It's a journey.
I'd like to share one thing, that our
Yeah.
eighth tipping point is that she just named our eighth tipping point for us, which is capacity, which is the wisdom of a system. If you could all hear the wisdom in Valerie's sharing right here, the wisdom of a system that knows, okay, that's where we are. This is the capacity. And just really honoring that. And can you feel the gentleness in that? It's recognizing capacity. And if there are any parts that come up that say, oh, I should be able to just stay in here and do the 10 tipping points and be able to name my parts that are loudest and see them all and have no problem, just notice the sweetness of like a spiritual achiever like that. Can we all relate to a spiritual achiever like that? Just before Valerie leaves with us, we don't want to miss her gifts, the gifts of Valerie. We don't want to miss this. There's so many gifts in what she's sharing with us. Like this, the one that, but the wisdom of recognizing capacity and the gentleness. Oh, anything else you'd like to share as you sign off, Valerie?
I will say, Sid, that every time I get your emails and I see that you put these on for free regularly, it just, I just have so much gratitude. It's like, look at people helping people. Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh. Well, it was so wonderful having you with us today. And hey, come stop in any time. You're like, hey, Sid, I might just be here for 15 minutes, but I'm going to come visit.
Cool. And
Everybody,
maybe I'll
say
see
bye
you
to
at the
Valerie. Unconference, that'd be great. Bye, Valerie.
Bye, y'all. Nice meeting you.
We're gonna continue falling into the self, the beingness that's here in each of us. Just before we do that, going to this third tipping point, is there anything else that would like to be shared? Anything else that's bubbling as we get to do this as a group today? Anything bubbling? Mm. And then before we dive, let me just ask you, each of us, how are you? To notice what's here. Notice the parts. Maybe there's some enthusiasm. Maybe there's like, wow, Valerie really spoke for my part. I've got some overwhelm here too. Oh, if we can just notice what's here, see if we can be aware of others' overwhelm. Can we see that? Do we feel it? Is it a voice? Is it a sensation? Maybe there's some boredom. Come on, we want to get to all 10. Go faster, Sid. Just notice what's here. So this next one is it's really the heart of effortless IFS. I call it like riding the bike of being. And this is, you can remember as a kid learning how to ride a bike, that it really didn't matter what your parents described it or how your friends said, hey, you just do this and then you bounce and you kind of go with it didn't matter. It was where you really learned how to do it. If you remember, it was like getting on the bike and like maybe dad's holding you or something. Then you just, wow, you had to find balance and you tilted and then you fell and you fell. Then eventually you found that balance. Something found it. So we did the same thing with this beingness, learning how to ride the bike of being. And it's just fame and there's something learned. So for all of us right now, like what's that quality of beingness that's here for you? Maybe it's like this piece of David's. Maybe it's an openness, a connectedness, a presence that Debbie speaks of, presence and warmth. We find this sense of being, can we find resting as this, in this piece, in this, whatever this flavor is, And then a thought comes. Oh, I'm not sure I'm doing this right. And it's like the bike starts to tilt. I'm not doing it right. We start to blend with that. And then something gets it. Boy, there's balance, there's peace here, there's okayness here, there's love here. And the bike of being comes back. Another part comes up. This is a lot. I don't know if I can do all of this. This is a lot. And it starts to identify with that and blend with it. And we notice that. And as we notice that, the bike comes back. Here we are. And this is in this tipping point, our entire focus is really on the qualities of beingness. And so there's like a loving indifference towards what arises. Loving indifference. Where focus is on kind of sinking in to this beingness and just learning how to ride the bike to stay here more and more. Notice what this is like and notice when you start to lean. You start to lean. It's like, oh, where's it going next? Am I doing this right? I'm not sure I'm following what he said. And then we come back. We come back to the beingness. Because this is where we're going next. This is kind of a foundational thing that we'll continue with today, this bike of being. Is there beingness here? Are we resting here? Okay, that was a lot. Okay, that was enough. That was a lot. That was plenty. Breathe. We can maybe move your body a little bit. Like, woo, that was a lot. Exactly. Thank you, Brenda. Woo, as we move a little bit, it's like, whoa. It's like because it's like riding a bike. When you're learning how to ride the bike, if you're like, okay, I gotta do this right, that's not how it works, right? Something just learns and we just relax and play like we're together today. So how are we doing? David has his hand up and I'm curious what's going on with him and love to hear from somebody else too. David, what are you finding?
A part arose that was frustrated and struggling, desperately seeking the right words to express some things that it seemed paradoxical. And I just felt like a wall going up around that part because I was not meeting the challenge of finding the right way to speak to everybody. And so there was this wall, but the very seeing of it as opposed to being in it, but like you were talking about before, seeing it from someplace else created this energized freedom and spontaneity. And so that was a big shift from a character of beingness that was peaceful and calm is now energized body presence. So I'm happy about that. I'm riding that bike. It just feels like I'm riding it very effortlessly. Hence the E in EIFS. I don't know, what can you say?
And it's somehow like as you were able to kind of unblend from that part and get some space from it, it was like this peaceful aliveness became more alive and more energized.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So how do we all relate to that? Oh, good. I was wondering how it was going for you, Johannes. Let me just ask everybody this question. How do we relate to what David said as I get a little blended with, oh, how am I going to say this? How am I going to do it right or should or something like that? And then we get some space from it, or we just the bike just kind of writes itself. We come back to the calmness and peace. And it's like, wow, there's more aliveness here when I'm not attached, blending, identified. We all find that, or how do we find that for our systems? Johannes, hey, what's going on?
Hey. So, first of all, thank you for this really nice metaphor, riding the bike. It was like just this image, this metaphor of riding the bike got me into the into this balanced place. And as if riding a bike and you get out of balance, when you get tight, then or think you need to do something, get reactive on that, it will get you even out of balance even more. So that's the very same thing. So this metaphor is really great, and so thank you for that. It was like I just was more feeling into that thing, like feeling the balance, feeling that floatiness even of that metaphor, and that got me into the state and got me more balanced. So yeah, worked really fine for me.
And what did you
Thank
find when you were in this balance? You said some floatiness and just kind of resting here. What's it like? What flavor of beingness was here? Like David describes like a peacefulness and aliveness. What's here for you?
It's a stillness, but yeah, bit of floaty stillness. So it's like not rigidly still, but it's still, but yeah, like a cloud in the sky with when there's not too much wind. So still, but not fixed, like moving a little but stable.
Oh, so let's not. I don't want us to miss this one. A cloud just kind of floating in the sky. Stillness, that maybe a lightness of being. What's most like this in each of us? What Johannes is describing. Like we don't want to miss this. This is part of our game. Like we each get to help each other, get to explore and discover more flavors of beingness and get to know it more in our systems as we each share. What's that like for you? Floaty cloud, lightness, stillness. Is it yummy? Like anything else you'd like to share, Johannes?
No, I think that's it for me now. I'm
Thank
happy to
you.
be here.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
gift. Thank you for your gift. Did we receive it? Did you like, whoa, thanks, Johannes, that was wonderful. How was that for you? And there's more because we got a hand up from Anne. Anne, what's this bike riding for you, this bike of being?
Well, I've just got a question first, which is, why are you calling them the 10 tipping points? What does that mean?
Great question.
So you're going through the 10 tipping points, I believe.
Yes.
And what is that? What's the context for that?
Perfect. So I just made this up, right? I just made this up. And what I'm really interested in is, what are your tipping points? Like, what are your 10 primary tipping points as your system opens up more to resting as beingness, to knowing the presence of this, as it identifies more and more with this that is causelessly okay in the fulfillment of your nature? What are your tipping points? What does the system learn as the healing occurs, as the weight that you carry, the sense of being in the past of these parts, as everything starts moving more and more to the present? How do you know what are the indicators of that in your system? And so what I made up is just from being with lots of people over these years and especially my own system. It's like, wow, this seems to be the updating, the shifts, the changes. And some of the past, they call it the vertical. As the system learns, it's the vertical. And so this is my version of it. And part of it, but just to play with this, to see what happens in your system as we play with this, but ideally to find your own. We all get to be artists of our healing and our awakenings. And how's that, Anne? How's that playing?
I think I mean a bit simpler than that. I don't understand what you mean. I don't understand when you say, what are my tipping points? Could you use another word for tipping points? Because I don't know what you mean by tipping points.
Absolutely. What are your ahas along this way? Like when you think of your path of healing, or your spiritual path, what have been the ahas? Like, oh my God, wow. I mean, this is just the ahas. Does that help? Or
No, because I'm just looking, I'm looking at a lot at parts, and then when I'm coming on here, it's more like a meditation of staying in being,
great,
because it's too
great.
quick. It seems too quick to go into the parts.
Yes.
And then I don't really understand what these aha moments are, because it's just all a bit confusing for me.
Perfect, perfect. And can we all relate to this? Like, yeah, I use this analogy of playing soccer, and a coach that says, okay, when you're learning to play soccer, you're going to learn this, 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 and this. Like, come on, I just go out on the field and I play, and it's like, I love it. I think for you, Anne, and this is where Debbie often helps me, because I can go into like categories like this. It's just forget all of this and let's just play. And as we're about to go someplace different, but it's like as we continue, maybe just see what happens inside of you, and you just get to be here and like just forget the tipping points, because it's like, yeah, how about that, and just see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of what I'm doing. I just
Perfect.
thought that
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. And so how about that? How about the gift of Anne here that's saying, this isn't working for me. It works differently in my system. And we all find the freedom that helps open up for all of us. It's like, how is it working for you? What's your way? And can we be in celebration of that? Thank you. Any final words, Anne?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. And then Debbie has her hand raised. What you got, Debbie?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. I really appreciate your question, and I can very much relate. I think for my system, it's like the linear, how you do it, how you're, your ways are very linear, and my brain is more like, it's like sees everything. So if I get caught up on, the linear, this, then my system is like, I get confused. And also for me, mine has to do more with like like regulating my nervous system, before I can even attempt to go get into self, if I'm keyed up. Yeah. So.
I love that. And so when we hear Debbie say, I really need to regulate my nervous system first before I can even fall into self. How do we relate to that? How is that true for each of us? And how do we do that? What helps us regulate our nervous system? Because that's very much included in how we're playing today. Because if you can't get some space from the parts, then we're just blended with the part. And then we get to be with that. So whatever's here, that's where we start. Anything else, Debbie?
No, thank you.
Oh, great. Well, we're about to go to kind of another big step. And just before we go, just how are you? How's everyone? How are you? Just as if there's no place we're going. We're just here now. There's nothing missing. We're in David loves this. He's my philosophy guru guy. He loves this. And it's just like, could it be that there's just perfection right here? That just what you are, what's arising here, there's nothing missing. And if there is a sense of something missing, notice that doesn't come from self, this beingness. There's no lack there. It's just a precious part that's trying to help you. As we're here together now, and we taste this that has no lack, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of okayness. Maybe it's presence, like Debbie was describing, this warm presence. Maybe it's peace. this that has this that's missing nothing. At the same time, what are the loudest voices what's arising? It's like, yes, that's nice. Maybe there's some peace here, but my body hurts and I don't like it. Or, gosh, I still have a lot I need to do today. Or I'm hungry, or this understanding part just isn't, it feels like I should be understanding something that I'm not understanding. And so for this next tipping point, my first question for all of us is, can we go back to the bike of being? Can we go back to the beingness, whatever flavor of beingness of self is here for each of us? We just sink in, and as Johannes was describing, find our balance here. For Anne, just resting in being, resting here. And as we have our balance on the bike, can we notice the loudest part? Can we notice it from here? There's nothing that needs to be done. Like, what's loud here? What's arising? Is it boredom? Is it anxiousness? Wanting to say something? Discomfort? Wanting something to be different? Sid should do this differently. What's the voice? And back there. Here's the bike. We're riding the bike. There's this beingness here. See if you can feel it. And then what's the next loudest thing that's arising in you? Is it like exhaustion? God, he's asking, this is too much. This is a lot. It's like Tom was saying, I can't remember all of this. This is too much to remember. Part that's trying to remember. Maybe it's a should, a do it right part. What's the next loudest voice? And this tipping point is being aware of two or more parts simultaneously. And this tipping point is the real shift for many of us in decreasing suffering in our system. Because again, the only way we suffer in this model is we identify or blend with an arising, with a part. But if your system can be aware at the same time of two or more, it becomes very difficult to blend and identify with a part. And that's where the suffering is. And when we're not identified with a part, we become identified with this bike, this beingness, this presence, this okayness, whatever it is for each of us. So for you right now, can you be aware of two parts, two arisings, two sensations simultaneously? At first, we'll go back, the system will go back and forth. Can you see them both? And if you're having some difficulty, see if you can zoom out. Just zoom back, zoom out. And for others, sometimes it's helpful to have a little metaphor. Like maybe this bike, it's more like, it's like a planetarium. It's the sky, it's the galaxy. And those two parts are like two planets that are here. Like you're in a planetarium and you see the whole thing, and wow. Or you're seeing it like a picture, where it's like a hot tub and they're just two parts are soaking in the hot tub. If we can see two and see if you can see them both, be aware of them both at the same time. I'm gonna go a little deeper in this. What's aware of the two parts? And for some of us, it becomes an observer, like an observer part that's aware, that's helping us out. And if so, can you be aware of this that is aware? This is like stepping back to the beingness and being aware of what's here, being aware of a part that might help us be aware. And here we are, riding the bike, and from this bike, from this beingness, from this presence, this awareness, there's awareness of two parts simultaneously. We don't have to do anything, we're just aware of them, like planet. All right, that's a lot. And then we can just shake it off a little bit. How are we doing? How was that? I'd love to hear from a couple people. Maybe. Yes, Brenda, how's it going?
A combination of things. what came up for me just now when you were sharing that, one, I was very at ease tootling along on my bike, enjoying that, and noticing when you talked last, that other part, I could feel my heart started beating, and I felt like this tightness in my chest, fear, like gripping fear, like to get it, so to speak, and be it. And yet on the bike, I am it in being. But I'm glad you brought in the third part as a reminder, and to observe that it softened, it's just there, it just is. And so, when I step back and look at, okay, those are both parts of me. Although as I'm saying that, I could feel some sadness for the part that grasps sometimes. So I don't know. I'm just
Brenda,
yakking.
that is so that is so much. Look at David's laughing, like, yay! That's so much. Like, how can we all relate to that? Like, we're aware of a part. There's this part that's going, I don't get this. It's kind of grasping, wants to get it. We figure it out. Like, have this. Like, I want to be embodied stuff, embodied beingness. Okay, I've got to work on this. Got to get this. We all know this part, right? We all know this part. Can we all find this part, this one that's kind of doing and working? Oh, great. Sandra's going to go next. So we can all find this part. And then it was so funny. Then Brenda's like, but wait a minute. On the bike, I already am that. I am that. I am this that's being sought by the grasping part. About that. And then there was some, like, I think some sadness and compassion from Brenda for the grasping part. Like, gosh, I try so hard. This part tries so hard. I try so hard. And here it is, riding the bike. Can we find that towards Brenda's part, towards the one that was grasping? Can we, as we hear that part, can we find some endearment towards it? It's trying. It wants this for Brenda. Can we find endearment for that part in Brenda? And then as we find that, can we also find the resonance in our own system? Like, yeah, that's not just Brenda that has that part. I know that part very well in my own system. As we find that in our own system, and this is where it gets a little more challenging, can we find endearment towards that part in our own system? Like the sense of no bad parts, it's doing its best, and it thinks this is how I'm going to get it. We find endearment for that in our own system. And lastly, in our own system, can we find that discernment between the part that's grasping and this that's riding the bike, this that already is it? That was so much, Brenda. Anything else you'd like to share, Brenda?
Oh, gratitude. Thank you.
Oh, gosh, how was that? Did we receive the gifts? What gifts from Brenda did we get here? That's so nice. All right. Special surprise. It's to Xandra. What you got for us, Xandra?
So I've got a part that's writing lots of things down, which feels like a bit of a confession. So I'm kind of just allowing that to happen. There's what magpieing ideas. This part said to steal phrases. So I've got that going on. But I'm noticing like more gentleness and more choices. So as somebody here has got an accent that is like my next door neighbor, it's like home, it's Kelly, I think. And there was a part that was coming in that with a really different energy that really wanted to connect to Kelly and ask her about that. And just noticing that almost just disintegrate and soften with, and the choice of do I, don't I, and noticing the same thing with the aloneness, the part that holds a lot of aloneness, and the allowing of that, meaning that the aloneness almost isn't there anymore, because with the allowing, the aloneness can't be there, because there can't be an aloneness with whilst there's an allowing. So sitting with that, and yeah, and just loads of gratitude for these spaces, and loads of parts towards the end. I was noticing a lot of parts. And then the part when you said about the part that is helping to notice the parts, the one that is logging all the parts and noticing that as well. And then when that one moves, it's almost like the busiest always. When that one has some space, everything just goes really still and quiet. But then there's a part that goes, oh, is that it? And I have this a lot, like there's a part that almost has a little bit of dissatisfaction with the stillness. It's like I don't know, an adrenaline junkie part that wants the drama or something. Yeah. Yeah.
As we feel into our systems, and this where Xander just took us, what resonated. And so is there any falling in that's happened as we were with Xander on this? Just describing the allowance, the gentleness, quiet stillness. When she's described the sense of the aloneness that was here, there was a part that felt alone. Do we all know that? Aloneness, lonely, and it might start like I want connection, be with people. The loneliness. And then she was describing, forget how she, like a sense of openness there, or the allowance. And then she said something, wow, the loneliness, it couldn't stay because it's with what opened, with this openness that's here. Doesn't make sense. And how about when she said, it wasn't it sweet at the very beginning, and I'm taking a lot of notes, Sid, because there's like some lines here that might be helpful. Isn't it the coolest thing? I forget who said this. I said about how we're all supporting each other and doing this together, because I spend often a couple hours a day on YouTube listening to people, and same thing. It's like, whoa, that was a really good one. I got to write that down. And then it's like, wow, it gets integrated into this. And so I love how we all do that together and support each other in this. I need to sign. Oh, Debbie, right. And is there anybody else? Often it's at the hour mark, if there's anyone who, so people depart and then the rest of us stay till for the hour and a half. Anybody else? It's like, okay, that was plenty. I'm like, Valerie, I'm full right now. Anybody else have that going on? No, okay. Then one more, Sandra, one more question. With this allowance, this gentleness, the sense of choosing, the stillness, what would you describe for you, this sense of quality of beingness that would, what's the default in Xandra? What are the ones that are most prominent in your system?
It's I think it's like love. It's almost like a just a warm hello, I see you, and it's just like that. Yeah.
Thank you. How about that, everyone? Did we follow? Could we feel resonance of that? Like if we have this tuning fork and we hear Xander describe, it's like love. Hello, I see you. I see you. This love, this welcoming. What's most like that in your system? Love, this hello, hello. What's that feel like? What's it like to be that? Different. How's that different than like the cloud or the stillness or the peace? Love, hello. Anything else you'd like to share, Xandra? Thank you. Well, we're going to go to Rumi's guest house next. We're going to go to Rumi's guest house. But before we go to the guest house, is there anything bubbling? Anybody having any difficulties? Everybody doing all right? Anything that's bubbling that's wanting to be shared before we go into Rumi land? Nice. And just to also notice, how are you? How are you? What's here? What parts are here? Gosh, I'm getting a little tired. Understanding part, trying to keep track of some of these things. Discomfort in the body. Just notice what's here. How are you? So Rumi says that this life is like a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. Joy, meanness, and depression. Welcome and entertain them all. Well, let's just, as we're here together, just notice who's the host of this guest house. What is the beingness that's here as we go back to our bikes, as we're on our bikes? At this, Johannes, this is the balance there on our bike. What are we balanced as? What's the balance? Is it like love? Is it Sandra's hello? Peace. Spaciousness, like the sky, the cloud. What is it for each of us? We're on our bike, this beingness. And then as we're from here, we have our guests, the parts. It's like, what are the two parts that are like loudest in your system right now? The two guests that you become aware of first. And can we stay on the bike? We're the host of the house. We're the space of the house. We notice the guests. Maybe they're walking in, around. Are they welcomed here? What's that like? Where are we? Is it peace? What are we welcoming them from? Is it presence? Or is it just stillness? Is it stillness? Is it emptiness? Is it connectedness, as Debbie and I did? What is it? So we have the guest house image, but it's really for each of us to find our own metaphor. This is where we bring it all together. This is where a lot of the healing occurs in the system. Another metaphor we often use is the infinite hot tub. It's like the beingness, this warmth, this love. It's like an infinite hot tub. And the parts, the guests, they just get to soak in the hot tub. Everything that arises in the space that's here. And it's like the space is a hot tub. Or maybe it's more like a stage. This is a stage, a theater, and the parts are actors. They're on the stage. They're just being seen, appreciated, welcomed. Maybe it's more like the planetarium. What is it for you? How does your system, how's it able to be aware of both? This riding the bike, this beingness, the space, and the parts. Is there an image? And for some of us, and maybe this is true for like ads, like, oh, God said all these words, all these concepts. No, there's just a space here. And then there's just what's arising and it's just being welcomed. Or there's just stillness here. Couple questions then. What's arising here? Your parts. Can they sense that they're not alone? And they sense that they are being welcomed, or there's something here. Perhaps you were here, which was Debbie was describing it as her. This presence is here. Sometimes they use the word I am, some of the spiritual teachers, but we use the word self or beingness. Your parts feel that. And what's it like? Is it like they're being held, welcomed, like a child being loved? Or is it like they're just soaking in the warmth? Or is it more like freedom? They're like, hey, they get to play in the house, or maybe they're outdoors in the yard playing. Kids on a playground, and they're just being seen. There's awareness of them. They're being welcomed. What's it like in your system? And just as we're doing this, notice there may be more parts show up. It's the guest house. It's open. Maybe there's another part that shows up. Am I doing this right? Or, wow, I can't really keep track of all the parts. An understanding part. Maybe a tired part, or a skeptical part, or a bored part. As Rumi says, can we welcome them all? And notice, do you have to do anything to welcome them? Or is it your very nature, like Xandra was describing? There's just love here. It's just hello, hello, hello. And what's that like for your parts? What's it like for what arises inside of you? Like Brenda's part, that's like there's something to do. There's a striving, there's a grasping. What's it like when these parts are just welcomed just as they are? And nothing needs to change. They're just being welcomed. What's that like for you? All right, that's a lot. We can move a little bit again and breathe. And who would like to share? How's it going? How's this going? The guest house, because we're even go a little deeper into this in a minute. Oh, Kelly, how's it going, Kelly?
Yeah, for me, it's like a log, and there's little like children or parts on the log. A very young part was really shy, and it's just like the presence is just leaning back, and then it just all goes. You can feel it, a slight little bit of shyness, but just lean back into the presence and everything's all right. The safety's there, the love's there, and it's beautiful.
Sense of these children that are on the log, that the parts they lean back, and then there's the presence. Is it like that?
Yeah, just lean back. And it's just peaceful.
Just peaceful. How about that for all of us? The sense of the leaning back. It's like, whoa, presence, the peace is here. How does that translate for your system? How does that translate for your system? Hang on. How does that translate? Leaning back. And then Kelly mentions the shy part. Can we relate to that as we hear her shy part? Is there endearment for her shy part? It's like, oh, I know that part. I know that shy part. Endearment for it. Can we find an aspect of that in our system? Shy part. And can we find endearment towards that shy part? Is it welcomed as well? Does anything need to change? Anything else, Kelly?
Just there's a part that wants to go off and play, reluctant to come and sit down. But there's just amusement. I'm just smiling at that part. Plenty of time to play later.
That wants to go off and play. Do you have parts relate to that? One that wants to go off and play. Maybe it's, oh, I have to sit in this chair for an hour and a half. I want to roll around. I want to go outside. Thank you, Kelly. Hey, Tom, what are you finding?
Uh, it's been this, and it's been like really hard recently. And I'm just like, this is fun and it feels amazing. So I've just got this very grateful, very excited, and the feeling of like being in this space is just incredible. It's so good. So yeah, I just wanted to share because it's just like building up. It's like this is fucking amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And then I've got this other part that comes up, and it's like every time you ask people what their default thing is, it's like, Sid, you know you can't put this into words, right? It's like impossible to describe. You're asking us to describe the impossible. It's like completely ineffable. But then it is so beautiful that when people do put it into words, it mixes with other people's and it does reveal more. It's amazing actually, because even though the words are concepts, they're pointing to this thing that's always here. And it's beautiful. So thank you.
And one more question, Tom. This ineffable, this that's ineffable, this that you love so dearly. Any words to describe how it is in you as we were as yeah, what's the flavor of it that's here now?
That part's come up again. Like, I can't. Like, I'll try. Um, it's really when I'm really feeling into it, there's like this resonance in my entire being that like infuses all of my cells. I can feel this incredible like it's almost like a solidity. People talk about emptiness, but when I'm feeling this, it's like my body feels even more solid, you know, it's and there's a really kind of high vibrational quality to it.
Thank you. What about that for all of us as we hear Tom describe this sense of resonance, high vibration? What does it mean, vibration? Vibration resonance. Does that translate to your system for this beingness, for this that unnameable, indescribable? It's a resonance, a frequency, a high vibration. What's that for you? And I think that we've only done half of them. We've only done the five tipping points, and it's like we have like 13 minutes left. My thought is that we just gotta get to enjoy each other with what's arising for us regarding this is a lot, and that we continue because we got Kelly that did we got Anne, and did Kelly have something else to share? But like to see what else is here for us and how it's going as we bring it all together. Anne, what you got?
Well, I feel a bit the odd one out on here because I've got a part. I'm not sure whether to share this part because it's not very nice. It's
Well,
it's a bit of a party pooper, and it's got a lot of resistance to being here. The being is here too. The being finds it quite easy, but this part has been quite strong, and it's been strong in other meetings or the last meeting with you as well. I don't quite know what to make of it. It's a big resistance. It doesn't want to be here, but I don't know why. It doesn't fit in.
what does it say? What's the flavor of what it says, Anne? Like I don't want to. The resistance doesn't want to be here. Party pooper. What's the voice of it?
What do you mean?
Like is it like this isn't my way? Like I do it differently, or this is really tedious. All of these ideas. Like what's the party pooper? Or I want to go be in silence. I just want to be in beingness. What's there a flavor of it?
Perhaps this is too fast.
Mm-hmm.
A bit. There's too. I don't understand. I don't.
Great.
What's going on?
Perfect. Let me pause for just a minute. Like we don't want to miss this. Like this is this gift that Anne's describing here. this part that maybe there's another part like, wow, I shouldn't be talking about this part, but it's like this, the preciousness of this part and the wisdom of this part. Just as we hear her speaking, can we all relate to it as we have parts that are resistant? Maybe today it's like parts that are resistant, parts that, well, some of this works, some of this didn't, or if we don't know it here, we know it other places, right? I've walked out of a lot of movies in my life. It's like we know that part. And so how is it how is it being there and having that kind of resistance, that wisdom, that some of this isn't speaking to me? This, what's it like inside with that? Can that part be welcomed and appreciated?
Yeah, I was trying to do that with it because it kind of reminds me of one of my sisters. Kind of see her in that part. So I am trying to welcome that part, and I think sometimes after the meeting there's just a bit of disappointment that everyone seemed to be on the same page, but I wasn't. Sometimes when there's like too much fun and joy, I think that's what it is. I think that part's not good at the fun and joy. It's too much for it.
Let me pause for just a minute. Can we
Too
all
much.
relate to that? Can we all relate to this part Anne's describing? Like, let's say a whole bunch of kids came in your room and they were having a party, and it's like, wait a minute, no, I'm being about peacefulness. I'm being about the stillness, love, this, and all the playfulness that's there with the kids. Let's see if we can appreciate Anne's part, and if we can find a resonance in our own system. And it's just the gift of Anne. I don't know if you can feel this, Anne, but you're opening up the space for all of us by being able to speak for a part like this. Like Jessica often does this in my groups, and I always so appreciate it when she does, when there's a part that, no, this isn't working for me. I don't like, this isn't helpful. Because it really has this become more real, that what this is about is each of our systems, what works for each of us, and not some idea outside of us or what EIFS or SID or some non-dual teacher speaking of. It's about what's real for us. Anything else you'd like to share with this, Anne?
Yeah, I feel a bit of relief now. There's a little bit of, not tears, but something coming up that feels heard, and I feel like you said, there's a party going on and I'm in the corner somewhere, and I just want it to stop, and listen or be seen, or or slow down, just to be part of it. But I'm too quiet, too shy. That part of me, it's not up to it. So yeah, it's quite a relief.
And what's it like? Can we all, how about what Anne just did? Like she spoke for this part of her, right? This sense of being in the corner. I just want this to calm down, slow down. I don't like it. But she spoke for this part instead of overriding it. Everything's okay. She spoke for the part. Can you relate? Like, gosh, I wish I had that in my system. Like the sense of those parts of us that are kind of quiet, that are pushed aside. Can we all find this? That ones that are like, whoa, I want Anne as my advocate. I want Anne to speak up for me too. Can we find parts like that that have been pushed aside? We just want to receive the gifts of our friend here. Thank you, Anne. Thank you. All right, we just got 7 minutes. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I just want to say as well, it didn't appear like that. It appeared like I'm bad. There's something wrong with me. I can't be here. So anyway, I've got lots of material there to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Everybody find that? I'm not doing it right. I'm bad. I shouldn't be here. and it's like we all know that part, right? First, can we find endearment for that part in Anne? Find endearment for it. Can we find that aspect in our own system? I'm wrong. I'm not doing it right. I shouldn't be here. Something should be, whatever. I should be a straight A student. And can that be welcomed? Can we find endearment for that in our own systems? David, did you have something bubbling that you wanted to share before we go to Jessica?
Yeah, I guess I very quickly go back to Xandra's speaking of love. It's like the whole universe of emotion that was probably already there, but I wasn't like acknowledging it. And that was really, kind of a wonderful thing. And then I saw a part that wanted to stop the flow. And I allowed that to happen. And it was just like there was no longer any, this is going to sound weird given that we're trying to avoid blending, right? But I was like, I guess the metaphor of balancing on the bike is good in that context. It's like I didn't have to pin down where I was. The being and the flow were like one. And I completely resonated with, I mean, I'm having a great time. But on the other hand, I completely resonated with what Anne was saying because I've been there. And I've been there in some of these meetings. And the fact that I'm not there right now is like, that's cool. But good job. I mean, I felt the endearment, that I loved it, so happy that you're here. Happy that we're all here. What can I say?
Thank you. Gosh, just to get the sense of like, could it be everything okay just the way we are, just the parts that are here? Can it be fascinating? Look at these precious aspects of me, the ones that are showing up in Anne, the ones that are showing up in Tom, Kelly, David, and all of us. Be like, it's just fascinated. And is there anything wrong? Does anything need to change? Or is it like the Rumi's guest house? Welcome. They get to all be welcomed. This is so fun. And one last thing before we go to Jessica, because David pointed to something, is like it's just a flow. It's like this beingness and the parts, there's a flow. And so ultimately, and we've all tasted this in different ways, because this is just kind of a skillful means of playing with what we're doing here and discerning between self and parts and getting to know self. Wow, there's a sense of self and parts. There's subject and object, but eventually we all know where it's like, oh, that's silly, Sid. Everything is of this. There's just this connectedness, this unity, this flow, this love, this beauty, this beingness. And so we all get to taste that. And so, all right, Jessica, what you got?
And I just want to say I'm struggling today too. So, and I have a part that feels like I'm being a bad student. And then I thought, well, am I going to let that mean I don't say anything? I think I can't do the bike thing as many times as we've done it. I think I can't do it. And what I was feeling when we were doing the bike is it's almost too mild or too neat. What I felt was, because it's never like one voice or one part, it's like a storm always. And what I was feeling was, I'm standing in the storm and I am the storm. And so then when you said there's only suffering if we identify with it, like I really struggle with that spiritual concept because the suffering is already there. That's why we exile it. And so then I was feeling like this big spiritual concept I'm disagreeing with. And the guest house, then I was like, but they're not guests, they are me. I am the house and I am, like, it just was a theme that just kept going. So that's where I'm at this morning.
Gosh. Well, Jessica, you've kind of catapulted us to where we would have gone today. You've gone to like the higher tipping points. You've in the struggling, what you're pointing to. It's just notice where we went, where you will go with what Jessica shared. If we really could listen for her system. In the sense of riding the bike, gosh, what do you mean? That's so linear and so this. Like, no, beingness is this. More like the sense of the sky, the clouds, the love. It's the bike's just one way of playing with it. And maybe just notice if with Jessica's sharing, that might be even better for your system. Sometimes it is for mine. The bike just seems ridiculous. Balance. How can I get? And then Jessica speaks of the guest house. Like, that doesn't really work so much because they're not like the guest. I am the guest too. I am the guest too. How do you make sense of that? Where do you go with that in your system? I just want to get to as we start moving towards closure. This what Jessica shared and the sense of, and can we also relate to the part that comes up? Like maybe I'm a bad student. I'm not getting this. I'm struggling because I'm not doing the bike thing right. And we all know that. And then as we come to really celebrate what's here for us, our system, this one, the resistance, Anne's resistance. Jessica's like, hey, kind of do it differently here. Does that help us find more endearment for our own systems, for our own parts, for our own way, for our own flow? Gosh, I wish we had another 3 hours today with the 9 of us. Any other, like, let's take maybe another 2 minutes. Any other bubbly, like for closure, any final words anyone would like to share?
I'll share. I just wanted to say, because it was my first experience, I'm very grateful for everyone. And yeah, just like more clarity and appreciation of the oneness that we are. We all are different, but we're all the same. It's just so beautiful. And really, I feel so much more welcoming of all the guests into my house. They're all welcome. It's all me. And I can run and play with them all and love them all. So thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Beautiful summary.
Thank you.
I'll close. And if there's anything you need to be, you can, yes, I'll go ahead and close for today. And just in my closure, can you see how this was co-created today? Each of our sharings, like where Jessica just took us and Brenda just took us with this, with each of our sharings. And then as such, and my God, we were given satsang by Xandra for 5 minutes today. And it's like for each of us where we went, can you see that you're sharing you sharing you, the gift it was to all of us. And sharing, I'm resistant. I don't know if I really want to be here. It's not really working. How that was like one of the great gifts of the day. If your system can hear that, just the appreciation of you. And I just want to thank each of you and invite you to come play anytime on the EIFS non-dual community on Facebook. And come back again. This was amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank each of you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful being with you today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sid.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Uh,
Hey.
What you got, Jessica?
I don't need anything if you need to run. I just was wanting to check on you.
Oh, I don't. Jessica, you really got me thinking about the bike. You know, because again, I just made all this stuff up, right? As you know, we've been doing this long enough. It keeps changing and evolving, right? And
Yeah.
Because I think I will maybe if I remember to do a disclaimer with that with the bike thing. It's like the bike, and this might just be absolutely not work for some of us that are more different in the way we find self, right? It's like it shows up differently, and I want it. And I also love where you went with the sense of that the parts aren't separate from me. The guests aren't separate. It's just that because that's been such a core part of my work. Because it's like when we hear our non-dual friends, it's very easy to like, I'm just going to go back and be the sky and leave all of this. And that's what I've been wanting to do the exact opposite in this work, in this EIFS. I'm wanting it to be so embodied and so like including all of life, including all of the precious expressions, especially the ones that we don't like ands, that one, and ands and yours. Like, oh, I'm not being a good student. All of that. Like, we don't want to miss any of it. It's like all of it.
Yeah. I think the bike analogy helps a lot of people. I just keep doing it, trying to do it every time. And it's like, this is just not.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then I think today I was like, I just feel messier than that. It's too messy for me. Like, I'm too messy for the bike analogy.
Yes. But it's also so good for me because remember, I went to law school. I got trained in all this like method, all that kind of stuff. And it's like who wants to hang out with a lawyer, right? And it's like, so this is like, it's really helpful. Like you and Debbie and Anne, it's like it keeps bringing it back, bringing it off into the somatic and bringing us back. And it's so helpful.
That's good. Sometimes it feels like, am I just arguing with like tradition that, or, you know,
I love this sense.
what
Like I
can,
love like it's just other people made it up. Like the tradition. Oh, someone else made that one up.
right? That's true. But yeah, but like, who am I? That's some arrogance to be like, well, I know this has been passed down for however long, and I'm just gonna say, I don't know. I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how like it can be scary to do that? It can be scary. I know it was scary for Anne to speak up like that, she was saying, like,
It was so brave.
mm, wow. I just
Just
arrived
be
back. I flew back to Sarasota yesterday. From
okay.
like maybe like 2 weeks, 10 days in Memphis with the folks. And really, yeah, I guess the uncertainty is there's never with all the balls that are in the air, it's like I'm kind of planning my life where kind of any day could be like, hey Sid, we need your help back here, and I get back on a plane. And so that's different. Like even scheduling these, I get a little wary, I'm a little wary of carefulness with that. But Dad seems to be well enough that I could come back to my home here. And it's like what I get so much from like sharing the group here, because this is all that's going on in me is what we're talking about today. I mean, just if I just stayed with that first tipping point, the how am I, just being aware of what's here, that does so much for finding okayness here. Because same thing, I get blended in and I'm scared what's going to happen and I'm not going to do it right. I'm not being the son I want to be. And I even thought it was funny. I was even thinking about oh, maybe I should go to some like a weekend retreat sometime. There's like this kind of this new age kind of raw food center by me where it's just kind of a retreat center. You go and you take care of yourself like a little spa. And I'm like, maybe I should go to that. But it was so interesting. Like I would go there so that I could find like the peace of self, right? And it would be like, and I've been really being with that today. And it's like, oh no, I could just find it. I could just do my how am I and go there. And so it's just that it seems to be like the tipping point. It's not one of the, I don't know, the edge right here is just that, is like the idea of kind of following parts, doing something to be able to find, oh, I need, I need I need a break, I need peace, I need to just, because there's been so much going on with managing the family things. And it was literally like, I really got caught like a couple of hours. I was kind of brainstorming, oh, where should I go? I should fly here or drive here and do this and give myself that to kind of revive it. And it's like, wait a minute, I got to just like, I got these EIFS. I can just be in that. And so that was happening today, this morning for a couple hours in bed. I was just sitting with it doing that.
Yeah. So you're what do you call it? The rocking chair? You feel like you're doing the rocking chair?
Exactly. It's like just that lean back. I like it. Who was it? Was it Kelly was describing I love the leaning back. That was like the rocking chair, leaning back to the beingness. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would tell you, Jessica, just like the sense of what you're describing, being the parts and being in here. Because one of the concerns was that, and I've had this happen some, like I didn't want to miss a day of my dad's life, I don't want to miss a moment of it, the dearness of it. And it's like, I didn't want to go too far into just the beingness, just the peace, right? I want to be fully in all of this. And it's been I've been very careful in that way. Like I'm wanting to stay with parts and stay so intimate with them that all of this is just it's all, I'm right here.
The hard paradox to hold sometimes.
Yes. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been, I find it fascinating both in my own system, and then it becomes really fun and really interesting trying to share it. And like, because this is while I'm working with that paradox that both and that we're playing with. And it's fun. There's a funness in that and getting to do it with people. It's not just right here. I'm doing it with everybody. Like we hear Tom today talk about his enthusiasm. Oh my God. And Brenda talking about, wait, like I'm wanting this, I'm grasping for it, but wait, I'm writing, here I am. It is here. What I'm wanting is here. And both and I love it all. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that your dad's doing well enough you can be home.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks for being here today. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I could tell you were home because you're tree painting.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for being here. It's just like, as you know, there's always, I think I told you, it's always like, there's the heart. Oh, Jessica's here. It's like it totally, like I can even find it. It's like it just evokes the love and beingness. Like Jessica's here. And it's like, so.
You're making me cry, sis.